Hi, I'm John Fitzgerald and welcome to this week's Team Talk. You know, one of the favourite things I love to do at home is watch documentaries on the universe and how, we live in this amazing universe, and it just reminds me how infinitesimal we are, how insignificant. And I was watching a documentary where Steven Hawkins, the famous physicist, is talking about there could be billions and billions of other universes. Thinking just amazing, just amazing. But let's talk about our world, because it's also important to talk about our world and how exponentially it's growing and changing at a much faster rate than it's ever changed before. And why I bring this up is you've got to recognise, I often talk about change, but how it's going to affect us so rapidly in the next 10, 20 years. I gave an example a few team talks ago about how bookshops have come and gone. And I used to love going to Borders bookshops in Australia. They were just fantastic. Now they've come and they've gone broke. They've gone broke because people aren't buying books anymore. We're doing it all online. Wow. But the biggest change is in population. And I'm a bit of a population nut. I study population data and demographics. And I was in a conference on demographics in the US a few years ago. It was very interesting because there was a demographer there talking about how the population of the world has hit or about to hit 7 billion people. And 50, 60 years ago, it was 3.5 billion years, and at the start of the century, it was 1.5 or thereabout billion years. So it's doubling every 50 years. I'm thinking, wow, does that mean we're going to hit 14 billion by 2050, 2060? No. They're talking about potentially we could hit 9 to 11 billion before the population subsides. And the whole theory of it potentially subsiding is by Africa and the third world countries that are creating the major population boost, who have 6, 8 kids. If they educate women in those areas, that will reduce the population rate. That's the theory. And there's a lot of money, a lot of effort, a lot of time, resources going into creating exactly that. That's all a theory, all interesting. I accept that. But it's when they started talking about Australia that I really took note, because they were saying today the population of the world is growing by around about 20 million a month. That is, and they said this, their words, that is 1 Australia per month. Incredible. And places like India, Pakistan, etc. is growing by 1 Australia per annum. Incredible. And then they said, let's talk about Australia. Australia has 5% of the land mass, the total world land mass, and we have a fraction of 0.5% of the population. Now, they left it just sitting there, but I'm just obviously thinking, well, does that mean we should have 1% of the population? If that was the case, we'd have 70 million people here today. Now, why is that interesting? It's interesting because one of the biggest news items we have is boat people coming to Australia. Our kids and their kids have to really think about what we're going to do about this, because we're not going to get any sympathy from overseas countries for pushing away boat people when we've got 5% of the world's land mass and we have less than half of 1% of the world's population. And we need to think about that, because we're going to have to pull our weight when it comes to population growth. And it's interesting, the government brought in a change just recently where they said, okay, we're not going to have detention centres for refugees, etc. What we're going to do is we're going to pay Australians to have these people in their homes. Just a changing demographic. Not something to worry about, to me, not an obstacle, something that creates an opportunity, something that's exciting. And for us to be aware of that. Thanks for listening to me.